For about half a century, pretty much the whole world was defined by one single conflict, the Cold War. But when that ended, and then you had the shock of 9/11, well, the United States was thrown into a totally new, really unpredictable era. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the complex foreign policy challenges that have shaped the last 3 decades.
So, this was the million-dollar question, right? The main global conflict that had basically structured all of international politics for 50 years was, poof, gone. It was this moment of huge opportunity, for sure, but also just profound uncertainty. What kind of world was going to replace the old one? Nobody really knew.
Well, the answer came in two massive jolts. First, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, which left the US as the world's only superpower. Then, just a decade later, the 9/11 attacks completely shattered that sense of security, kicking off a new, borderless kind of conflict. You put those two moments together, and they created this cascade of challenges that we are still trying to figure out today. First up, let's follow the money, because this new era wasn't just defined by politics and military stuff. It was really powered by a brand new economic engine, globalization. And this created a really tangled web of both opportunities and major pressures for the US.
So what do we even mean by globalization? You hear that word all the time, but at its core, it's pretty simple. It's the idea that everything is connected. Money, products, technology, even people, they're all moving across borders faster and more freely than ever before. It basically created a new operating system for the entire world economy.
And this new system, it brought on some immediate pressures. The US dollar became the world's go-to currency. Now that sounds great, right? But it also meant that any little economic shift in the US could create these massive ripple effects all over the globe. The country also had to manage a super delicate trade balance, deal with powerful groups like the World Trade Organization, and face one of the most hotly debated issues of all, the outsourcing of American jobs.
Now, what's really interesting here is how clearly this lays out the trade-off. It's pretty stark. On one hand, you keep jobs at home, which means higher labor costs, but it supports local communities. On the other hand, you outsource, which lowers costs for companies, but moves jobs overseas and creates these incredibly complex supply chains that, as we've seen, can be really, really fragile. This one issue became a huge source of tension in American economic policy.
Okay, let's move on, because the challenges went way beyond just the economy. This new globalized world also created problems that just didn't care about borders or politics. These were issues that were fundamentally about people, about health, and about ethics.
And wow, this is a big one. The very same interconnectedness that lets you order a package from the other side of the world, well, it also lets a virus travel just as fast. We saw it with outbreaks like SARS and Ebola. A health crisis that starts locally can become a global threat in a matter of weeks. It turned public health into a really urgent foreign policy issue. At the very same time, political unrest and conflict, especially in the Middle East, led to a massive increase in the number of refugees. We're talking millions of people forced to flee their homes, creating these enormous social and political challenges for countries all over the world, including, of course, the United States. And when you see these kinds of crises, the natural response is a call for help. The U.S. found itself under growing pressure to provide humanitarian aid, things like food, medicine, and shelter, to people affected by war or natural disasters. This aid became both a moral responsibility and a very complex and sometimes pretty controversial tool of foreign policy. Beyond aid, the whole war on terror created these brand new legal and ethical dilemmas that no one had really faced before. The traditional rules of war didn't seem to apply to groups that weren't countries, which led to this fierce debate over a really fundamental question: what rights do enemy combatants have? And this became a major political fault line, both at home and across the world.
Now let's pivot to the modern battlefield. Because the 9/11 attacks didn't just start a war, they fundamentally changed the mission, the budget, and the very definition of what national security even meant for the United States. It was a whole new ballgame.
You can really see this transformation happen in 3 key ways. First, defense spending just skyrocketed to fund the new war on terrorism. Second, the U.S. and its allies got deeply involved in the incredibly complex political and social landscape of the Middle East. And third, the fear that weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, could fall into the wrong hands became a top priority, and it drove military strategy for years. So here's the most crucial point to get from all of this. None of these challenges, not the economic, the social, or the military ones, exist in a vacuum. They are all linked.
A military action in one country can trigger a refugee crisis, which then requires an economic response through humanitarian aid, all while being debated politically back home. It's all one big interconnected system.
So, what does this all mean for us now? I mean, this isn't just a history lesson. The decisions made in that post-9/11 period created the world we're living in right now, and its legacy is absolutely still unfolding all around us.
So, to recap, it really all boils down to these three core pillars. On the economic front, it's that constant tightrope walk between global opportunities and jobs at home. Socially and politically, it's about learning how to respond to crises that don't respect any borders. And from a military standpoint, it's about adapting to threats that look nothing like the wars of the 20th century.
And that brings us to the central question I want to leave you with. From trade deals and global health responses to military deployments and debates over immigration, the echoes of this era are literally everywhere. So the next time you see a headline about foreign policy, just ask yourself, how are the challenges that were born after 9/11 still shaping the decisions being made right now?